Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. If by Calypso or stories are told, then we aim to tell those stories through the year. Now hear me out. Sometimes you can hear something and think it's just that, but we are a multi-level, multi-layered people. Now when you hear all this preamble, I hope we're whetting your appetite. It is time to discuss the people man, a study of relations and resolutions. And we're doing so with calypsonian and entrepreneur Maria Bhola-Paul and the chair and regional president of the Caribbean Women Honors and Empowerment T&T Chapter, Wendy H. Lewis. Greetings, ladies, thank you so much for making the time. And Maria, I want to start off with you, please, because as the writer of this song that was making waves, I want to ask the importance of seeing that there is more than one person at fault in the premise of the song. I think sometimes it's almost just a case of blaming the outside woman who caused an innocent man to fall from grace. So to you, what's the importance of saying that there's more than one person to blame in this situation?
Greetings, Trinidad and Tobago, and thank you for having me. Well, it is very, very important. I think one of the first things that we must realize is that a calypso, you really only have just about 6 to 8 minutes to render, so sometimes it's challenging to touch on every part of the issue, right? And in the case of the people man, where the focus was mainly on the two women, I touched on things that I think was pertinent in terms of that relationship. But it is absolutely not to say that the man is not at fault. Absolutely, he has his role to play. And I am quite certain his wife would have dealt with him in a particular way, but let's leave room for another topic another time.
I think sometimes too, it's not just that there's someone to blame as opposed to saying, okay, well, I can see, or because, sometimes people just say, this person come and take the man, as opposed to saying, okay, well, something else was happening. And is that something that you experience as well, Ms. Lewis?
I first of all, allow me greetings to Trinidad and Tobago, your viewing and listening audience, and happy International Women's Month as well. I believe that, the eyes that you see a situation with are based on your own experiences and your own knowledge. So we could strip this song to probably 10 pieces. But at the end of the day, I also believe that everybody has a choice. You get to choose what you accept, you get to choose what you allow. So I think it boils down to choices by each individual.
And it seems as though being able to strip this down and have basically 10 points to focus on, you actually felt the need to dive down into this song and talk about some of the factors during the season. So what were some of those things, and why the reason to say, yes, I'm going to talk about this one. This one resonates with me enough that I want to actually talk about some of these points, Ms. Lewis.
One of the things that I recognize, so when I heard the song, I would have heard the song privately. And when I heard the song, I knew the message that people would have received based on the culture of Trinidad and Tobago and different experiences across the diaspora. And I realized that the man's role in it all was omitted, technically. And then I realized that at some point in the song, it seemed as if the wife was the accepting one, and she is the one that's educating the other woman. If this is what you want to be a part of, there are some rules, which told me upfront that she's not prepared to walk away. She's not prepared to allow anyone to interfere with what she has built over the years. So, however, if I have to settle, there must be some rules and some regulations. Also, at the end of the day, the wife, she could have made a different choice. But one of the things that I realized with her choices, she also had boundaries. A lot of people got excited when they saw, a dildo on the platform at Calypso Fiesta. And they saw it in a different light as opposed to the idea of not being willing to accept an STI or an STD or any of those things. So even though stipulations and rules were being mentioned, there were boundaries. At the end of the day, whilst all of this is taking place in my home, I need to look after number one. And for me, that connected with me because of a woman's worth. When you know your worth, there are things you do not accept and there are boundaries that you set to protect you. So that is what triggered me into the song. And I started having several different conversations, and people were like, I didn't see it that way. When I saw it in the park, I thought of this particular thing. But now you've explained it. Oh my God. So, it's based on the eyes that you look at it with. And because of the things that I do and the umbrella that I sit under, where I tend to advocate for women's issues, I always want to see the positive side of every situation.
And thank you for that. And Ms. Bhola-Paul, you raised the point that there's a certain amount of time that you have to render. You cannot address every situation in one song, as opposed to hopefully sparking a conversation. What was the main thing that you wanted to do when you put pen to paper and decided to say, okay, well, this is what I am going to be writing at this point in time?
Absolutely, it would be raise awareness. Not that we need that much help in terms of, what we call in Trinidad and Tobago honing. We have a lot of awareness with respect to that. But with respect to women, and as Wendy did mention, with respect to women and their choices, that is what was most important for me. Sometimes based on a situation or a circumstance, a lot of women may feel that they do not have a choice. I remember at one point in time in my own personal life, I felt that way. And I really wanted to bring across, there is a choice. There are options, so that is something that was really, really important for me. Not everyone may agree with the options put forward, but it's a personal issue. Everyone would deal with it in their own way based on their circumstances.
And once again, the power of the Calypso to spark that conversation, to have people talking about it and possibly get to different levels of that conversation when they're continuing. But this is something that we will look at when we reach on the other side of the conversation. We take a short break. We're speaking with Wendy H. Lewis as well as Maria Bhola-Paul, looking at alternative ways to conflict resolution within relationships and so much more, off of the premise of the people man. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are speaking with Maria Bhola-Paul as well as Wendy H. Lewis. We're looking at alternative relations and resolutions off of the Calypso, the people man, and looking at that power of choice and saying that my decision with how I deal with this situation. Were you grabbing from different places? Were you just taking things out of the air, anecdotal? What are some of the things that went into those decisions to make the situation work for the best, possibly in all interest of parties, Ms. Bhola?
Well, I definitely would have drawn from experience in terms of, as I mentioned before, my own personal experiences with having to make certain decisions in my own life, also from women in my life, be it friends or family who would have been in similar situations and having to make choices. And there were a number of varied choices that they made. I must admit, not everyone in a similar circumstance made the same choice. So I would have definitely drawn from those experiences in my life to put to paper what I produced.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And Ms. Lewis, looking at, you spoke a little earlier about a woman's worth and recognizing your worth as an individual. What are some of those things? And this is not necessarily just the Calypso itself, but in the work that you do, that process of reconciliation, working out incremental steps, how best to have a win-win scenario where that woman recognizes her worth, reasserts her power. What are some of the things that you think help in a situation like that?
I think the first thing, Dike, I would say is looking in the mirror. Who are you? Why are you here? And what are you here to accomplish? And are you satisfied with where you are? And if not, What can you do differently to accomplish those things? And that's the first place, because a lot of time we accept what has been poured out to us without recognizing that we can't make another choice. We can't make a different decision. But because of all the societal ills where they say, you're branded based on your location, you're branded based on the color of your skin, you're branded based on your surname. We as women are branded by so many different things. Some things are even generational. And at the end of the day, you get to break that cycle. You get to do something different, not because your mother or your grandmother or that whole cycle, your whole entire generation is receiving physical abuse means that you're next. What you can do is get to the root of the problem. Why did this happen? Is it because of the choices my mother, my grandmother, my aunts have been making that they decided that they have to stay no matter what? Why did they stay? Is it because religion has depicted, for better or for worse, and that's their concept of what a marriage is? So all of these questions come into the fray, and at the end of the day, you get to decide what you want for your life and look in the mirror. And we get to change that you get to change this entire thing of. And one of the things I recognize within my NGO as well, DK, a lot of women who suffer physical abuse is because they saw it in the home and they've accepted it as the norm. And it's not the norm. It's not normal for you to be blue black every day. It's not normal for you to be treated like the outside woman when you are wearing the ring. That's not normal behavior. Marriage is an institution. Now, this is not a judgment call, because sometimes people are a victim of circumstances. You find yourself in situations and you're in survival mode. So sometimes you do what you have to do for your children. You do what you have to do to get to your next destination. So it's in no way a judgment call. But at the end of the day, I think looking in the mirror is the starting point and asking yourself, what do you want for you? Not what your mother thinks you should become, not what your neighbors or your friends think you should become. What do you want for you?
Thank you. And I want to categorically state that, yes, we're starting on the premise of the Calypso, but we're moving outward, and we're also not a victim blaming, be it one way or the other.
Yeah.
And with that, though, in terms of, I want to ask almost a double question to you, Ms. Paul, in the sense that empowering, finding your worth of self, and the way that you would have written this Calypso, looking at the fact that, yes, okay, I see this is the situation, but at the same time, I am claiming power. I am regaining power. So these are the terms. If you're willing to stay here, well, this was happening, and you lay down the law. But how important was it for that person, the wife in that situation, to reclaim that kind of power? And I also tie that into what kind of feedback were you getting, and did they kind of reflect some of the thoughts or the thought process you had while writing?
Well, it was very, very important. That second part of the question there really threw me to something I was thinking just this morning. The woman, the wife in this case, it was really important for her to assert and to make certain decisions. Like when Wendy mentioned, even with the dildo, a lot of people really took that as, humor, and, they went different ways with it. But it was a stance for protecting myself, right? Protecting myself. This Calypso, I will admit, there were a lot of mixed reactions in certain places. Like, for example, when I performed it at the Dimanche Gras, I could hear the crowd, the response. When I performed it in the Carnival Village, they were cheering on, encore after encore. I performed it, and this is so interesting. I performed it kind of impromptu. It was not planned. I attended the Randy Glasgow alternative concert the other day. And he found out that I was in the audience, and he asked me if I would be willing to perform the song, and I did. And I would tell you that I did mention this to Wendy. It was one of the coldest receptions to the song that I have had for the season. And you would think that this is a laugh festival where people come in to laugh and peacock and they're expecting this kind of thing. And the room was cold. I read the room and it was cold. And a very prominent person, a woman, I prefer not to call her name, she approached me after singing. And she said to me, "Listen, Maria, you affected that room. The room was filled with a lot of mature people. She said, and these were women who would have gone through things. And I could feel it in the atmosphere that you were affecting people. Nothing to do with whether the song is a good song, if people will enjoy it or not. But the audience at that point in time, they were truly affected by the lyrics.
And it's interesting in the sense that sometimes people talk about how good a song is by the response, that, and you were just intimating, as opposed to having a song have that sort of profound effect on a person. So while they're there physically, you have them go into memory, history, possibly they're triggered in a way, starting to discuss with themselves, could I have done this differently? Could I have done that differently? What is this person doing that I could have taken and used in my toolbox? And
yeah.
With regard to those toolboxes, Ms. Lewis, what are some of the things that you tell people when they find themselves in a situation like this, if they don't have that circle around them or they're not willing to make those sorts of choices?
The first question I ask is, why are you here? Why was this your alternative? Why was this your choice? Or was it not your choice and you were a victim of circumstance? One of the things I want to highlight as well, with the lyrics coming from the wife, I don't believe that she expected the outside woman to adhere to any of those rules. I think it was a deterrent. So when you realize that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all these different things, especially the day when you have to pay school fees and all these different things that you didn't cater for, because you want something from this man, which is why you've decided to be with him. And that could be monetary. So which means you need taken care of financially. You can't afford to take the money that he's given you to then now pay for his own children. The triangle not really making sense. So for me, the lyrical content as it relates to the wife was more of a deterrent, as comical as it was. Because in reality, I don't think there's any woman who's accepting those rules. So for me, it was a deterrent.
Okay, and the last minute is yours, Ms. Bhola-Paul.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so I think I would just like to express my gratitude to people who would have messaged me publicly and privately. I had discussions with several women who were going through similar issues. It was really a springboard for women to reach out to me and to begin having discussions about Wendy, a woman's worth.
Wow.
So I am so happy that this song has really pushed people to go deeper into conversation, and it's not just considered a song. People have been doing commentary on Facebook and social media. I saw some articles in the newspaper. I am really happy that it's going beyond just a calypso. And we are seeing that this is a serious social issue, and it was a serious social commentary.
And it really means something when you find that this is something that lives on beyond a season and it can affect lives in such a profound manner. Wendy H, Lewis, and Maria Bhola-Paul, we want to thank you so much for spending the time to discuss this even further. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, I'm Dike Rostant. This has been In Depth with me. Thank you so much for joining us.